I don't know what I was expecting from Spider-Gwen, the Ghost Spider #1. I've never actually seen a comic book try to convince me even harder that it shouldn't even exist, but this one goes for it, Doc, and it goes for it with bluster.
It is the first time I've ever read a comic book where the author is also telling us, don't buy my book because there's no purpose for its existence.
So you would expect the character to feel a little alienated, maybe a person out of place or something like that. And she certainly has that going for her. But for the most part, she's pointing out that there's too many Spider-Man characters already in the universe, and she has no reason really for existing. And I was just confused, but it is Stephanie Phillips.
Got the world's most doesn't need to be here and doesn't care to be here writer in a universe that already has 4 million spider people. And the goal of the book is to not be Spider-Girl. They didn't even bother to explain why Gwen needed to be in this universe or why she had to leave her own. Feels like all those things would have been premises to set up in the beginning of this comic.
You needed to make something about the character special or something about her mission there to be important. There's nothing really to buy into in this comic book, especially the art. I've never seen Federica Mancin on a comic book. There are a couple of splash pages that don't look completely terrible, but anytime you see one of these cameos, they are the worst versions of the heroes I've ever seen. This is the worst version of Craven I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen Craven the Dandy. There's even a Peter Parker cameo, and he's completely unrecognizable. You wouldn't know it if she didn't mention who he was, and him recognizing her just looked like some jabroni from Archie.
It was a scene with a bunch of other people all walking around, and Peter Parker is completely indistinguishable from random jabroni number 43 that would be otherwise in the background of a comic. I mean, I get it. Peter is handsome, but kind of generic looking. Peter Parker has a model. Marvel drew the model sheet for him. This artist couldn't even bother to know it, didn't bother to even look at it, or is not qualified enough as an artist to make Peter Parker look like Peter Parker. I mean, at least Miles Morales got to wear his fucking costume.
You certainly, Marvel and DC have gone out of their way to go out and discover these, I guess, female comic book artists to varying degrees of success. I would say Joelle Jones is a big success. Sweeney Boo, while not my favorite style, is very good at what they do. I would say this was an enormous whiff right out the gate. This does not make sense whatsoever for superheroes.
Honestly, it doesn't make much of sense for much of anything. This art was just bad.
Getting into the story from Stephanie Phillips, she is the original generic Stephanie. We start out in Gwen Stacy, obviously from another multiverse. In this universe where she's dead, we're reminded of that scene, which like any of us actually forgot about it. But she needs to get a bank account, and she's getting some pushback from the bank. And she's like, hey, you can't just give me your name. I got to have a social security number. You got to have more information. She's like, why don't you just give it to me? Which doesn't make any sense. Like, she's not a functioning adult in the other universe. And then some bank robbers come in, and she saves the day. And we get some confirmation that she's great. One guy has his hands up going, Spider-Woman's my favorite.
It's just dumb. It was just a way to put her in the scene and basically have her throw a temper tantrum. I don't know why you needed to start this with a scene with a bank robber, other than the fact that you're establishing generic stakes. Your premise here is no action, right? Because right after this, she goes home and we get to establish why she's here.
Well, that's the part that didn't make a whole lot of sense. I guess it was establishing that she's not allowed actually to use her powers. Apparently she's a symbiote. I guess she's been for a while. I never even realized that. But the TVA and her handler, OB, who has a really terrible name that I don't even want to try to pronounce, are like, hey, listen, we gave you a new identity. You're supposed to be here, but you can't contact any of your friends, even though this is probably the only place in the multiverse where you know other people. You can't be a Spider-Man, even though there's 8 other Spider-Man characters in this universe, and none of it made sense whatsoever. Why did they even put her here? And they're saying, well, we don't want multiples of a person in different multiverses. Well, that's the one she's from. Move the other one.
And please, you cannot even begin to tell me the 616 Earth is the only Earth in the multiverse in which Gwen Stacy is dead. I mean, the logic in this was indecipherable. They didn't want 2 of the same people there, but At the same time, she couldn't actually be that person. She had to have an alias she operated under, like a cover identity. She would be Gwen Stacy without being Gwen Stacy. She can't be Gwen Stacy in this world because everybody knows that this Gwen Stacy's dead. So she has a different name of fucking somebody. I don't know. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. She's just too stubborn to use this cover identity. This scene completely undermines the scene at the bank. So she could have perfectly easily gotten a bank account that she made a big deal about the fact that she can't get, except for they have a cover identity for her. This is stupid. And every scene seems to undermine the previous one.
If you really wanted her into the 616, which is a dumb idea to begin with, just destroy the other multiverse and have Miles save her and bring her back. Like, why make it so convoluted and jumping through hoops? It doesn't add to the drama or the stakes of the story. It just makes it exceptionally hard to buy into any of it.
Yeah, I think the only reason that she's in this this universe, that they didn't do it that way is because they wanted to keep her dad alive.
Bring him over. Why. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Bring him over too. Okay, fine. We can reset Spider-Man back to the fucking 70s by having Gwen Stacy and Captain Stacy both still alive in this universe. And you know what? Fuck it. Have them date too.
Each other? That's kind of weird.
Oh, no, I meant Gwen and Peter, because she's an adult. She's not like 16 anymore. Have them date. Why the fuck not? None of this makes sense, and none of it needs to make sense because nobody's going to read this stupid fucking comic.
Absolutely. And if it needed to make sense, they wouldn't have given it to Stephanie Phillips, and that's how you know that it's not important. But before she leaves, the TVA guy, who has forgiven her, even though she's already broken the rules and is using a real name, which she's not supposed to be doing, he's like, you have to promise me you won't break out the costume again and you won't use your superpowers and try to be hero here. The very next scene, she's like on the rooftops staking out the city, swooping down and saving a bus and basically recreating the scene from the Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
Like, what was the point of the whole conversation if she was just going to ignore everything?
There wasn't one. She just literally the next scene. And she justifies it by, well, he said no more stopping bank robberies, but he didn't say anything about stopping a runaway bus and saving
But when she
people.
was stopping the bank robbery, she knew she was already breaking the rules.
This comic is fucking stupid. They keep trying to establish some sort of, restriction on her that the author then turns around and ignores the next scene. This isn't adding stakes whatsoever. Right before this, we get this stupid interlude scene with Black Tarantula having a sparring session with somebody and talking about their plan, but he's not wearing a costume anymore. And let's see if we can get Sergey to do the job. That's why we finish this book up with fucking Craven showing up for absolutely no reason, looking like a goddamn dandy.
He did not look good whatsoever. And once she saves the bus, Craven arrives, and he just looks so comically stupid that you can't take your eyes off of it. You stop reading the words and everything, and you just look at it in amazement of how bad they botched Craven at this point. But I will give Stephanie Phillips a piece of credit on this one. I assume that she was just going to kick Craven's ass all over the place because she's a strong, independent female hero. And Craven does knife her pretty good. In fact, he throws her in the water, and it looks like she might be dying by the end. So at least she's going to have to overcome a little bit of a defeat, which I never would have assumed would have happened in this book.
She's kicking his ass, but then right at the end, I guess he gets in a lucky shot. That's at least the implication that I got from it, that it was going to be just kind of a lucky strike with the knife.
Lucky shot, man. It looked like he stabbed her in the liver.
I understand. Well, yeah, it was pretty well placed to a normal person, but they're going to probably try to portray it as if it was lucky shot.
So I will give the book this. At least she didn't just kick ass and wipe the floor with everybody in the very first episode or the first issue. She actually takes an L in here and is certainly in grave danger by the end of it and takes a knife to the abdomen by Craven. So at least she wasn't completely OP'd. But this story is really, really pointless. You're trying to establish a character, reintroduce her into a new multiverse. You don't have a good reason for her to come over. So you're constantly trying to justify the decision, but also justify the reason that she has a handler with the TVA, as if people have never ever showed up from another multiverse without handlers, why she can't talk to her friends, why, she's checking up on her dad. And you're just going, why is this stuff even happening? She's even questioned it. She's like, well, why wouldn't I be able to be Spider-Man? There's literally 8 different versions of Spider-Man here. Why is she so special that she can't do it? They never adequately actually explain it. I don't know why the TVA doesn't want her to be Spider-Gwen.
I don't know either. And they don't seem terribly interested in explaining that. They just seem interested in getting this book to exist, whether it needs to or not. The author doesn't want to be writing it, doesn't even want to sell you on why you should read it. The artists, they're just like, fuck it, I'm getting some pencil credits. So, you know what? Fuck it, whatever. We're going to just keep getting books like this that exist for the sake of existing, and then they go away, maybe. Hopefully.
Yeah, I don't feel very high about this comic book. I'll give it like a 1.5 out of 5, maybe a 3 out of 10. Certainly not a good maiden voyage for Spider-Gwen the Ghost Spider. The art was bad, but at least she took an L in the end from Craven, and that's probably the saving grace of the story. Otherwise, this thing, I don't even know what it was. It was just shitty.
They're going to keep trying to get Gwen over, using every possible means of doing so for as long as humanly possible, until we all say, no, I'm done. Honestly, I give this a 0 out of 5. And the reason I give this a 0 out of 5 is because it's a comic that didn't even seem to care enough about its own existence to try to continue its existence. This is the panda bear of comic books that just wants to go extinct.
Well, it can't happen soon enough. If you would like more of this review, as well as our conversation about the Jordan White Sinister Secrets, an interview on Adventures in Portes, Doc and I talked for like 40 minutes on that one. If you want it unedited, you got to go over to the Patreon. If you back us there, if you like what we're doing here, we like to give you lots of great podcasts. One of those is Doc Unfiltered. There's a link in the video description if you'd like to support us on Patreon.